representative of One Message Foundation, we'd like to extend a welcome to everyone who's come to tonight's event to hear this lecture. And we truly appreciate the fact that many of you, although maybe you may not agree with everything that you hear, at least take the time to come here this evening to hear something about Islam. And it is certainly our hope that with the information that will be shared tonight, you will come away with the truth about this religion, and inshallah, God willing, we'll come to understand some of the important aspects of our religion and hopefully clear some of the misconceptions that you might have, or any other questions that you might have. Before we get into an introduction to tonight's speaker, we just have a couple announcements to make. And the first is to those students who are attending tonight's event, and if you're attending tonight's event as an extra credit part of your course, then we would ask that all of you please stay till the very end, especially after the question and answers, because that really is a part of tonight's event. And at the conclusion of the event, there will be a sign-up sheet that will be available. So just please stay for the entire event, and including the question and answers. Because again, maybe there are questions that you might not think of that other persons might ask, and so it's beneficial for you to hear the answers to those questions. So we invite you all to please stay till the very end. Also, just to everybody in general, we would like to make mention of the fact that tonight's event really is a lecture. And so this is not really the setting or a time for any type of debate, but it's a lecture. So we'd like to tell everybody just to appropriately respect the fact that it is a lecture, and if during the course of the lecture you have any questions, to please write those questions down. We don't want to interrupt the speaker throughout the course of the lecture, because this can be a little bit of a distraction. So write those questions down if you have them, and inshallah, God willing, at the very end of the event, during that question and answer section, we will spend the time to answer those questions that you have. So write them down and just save them, and at the very end, you will have an opportunity to ask those questions and receive an answer to them. So in regards to tonight's speaker, Uthman Ibn Farooq, we'd like to make a little bit of mention about tonight's speaker and who he is. Uthman Ibn Farooq is a person who has a credential in that he has and holds a master's degree in the field of what we call the sciences of hadith. This is specifically with reference to Islamic knowledge in regards to the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. He has also studied under various Islamic scholars and teachers throughout various countries where Muslims are the majority population. And studying under these individuals, he has received what we call as ijaza or ijazat, which is basically authorization which he has received on the part of these Islamic scholars to in turn teach the works and the books that he has studied under these individuals. He himself is also an author of a book which deals with a specific subject or topic of Islamic worship. Brother Uthman is also very active in San Diego among the Muslim community. He's a lecturer as well as a teacher. He holds various courses, weekly course, which he teaches different Islamic subjects. He is also very active in spreading the message of Islam to non-Muslims by means of what we call da'wah activity, or, for example, going to different events to spread the knowledge of Islam, as well as attending various colleges and university campuses throughout San Diego to deliver lectures about the religion. So with all of this in mind, we'd like to ask now that everybody turn their attention to tonight's speaker, Uthman Ibn Farooq, as he discusses with us tonight's interesting topic about demystifying the religion of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu ala man taba al-qada. We'd like to begin today with a quick reminder. I know a lot of you may have come here for the extra credit. Trust me, I was in college. I remember those days. You don't know how you're doing your final. You could use the extra credit. But I would like to discuss something which I think is very important, and look at the significance of history and our place in history, and how this event can actually affect that. If you think back in history, you ever wonder, how could it be? You know, we get fed these news feeds about the past and these massacres, and you know, when you see people rushing in huge crowds to greet Hitler, somebody who's, you know, again, we've been taught about how cruel and insane and, you know, a homicidal maniac of a person he was, and he drove Germany into, you know, almost at the brink of destruction and everything. Then you wonder, how was it that many people, millions and millions and millions of sane, regular, hardworking people would follow such a leader, and would follow such a leader and allow him to carry out acts of genocide and acts of mass murders, invading countries, trying to wipe out populations. How did people who were men of God even follow such a man and agree with him to be able to bring forth a very common picture that we see? I'm sure everybody's seen these pictures before. How did this happen? I wonder myself, and you know, not to think too far into far-off lands, even if you look at our own country. This is a period that our country went through. Can you imagine? Look at the sign. Who wants to read the sign for me? Somebody. Raise a hand. Gentleman right there at the front. Man, you're racist. How could you even use that word? Right? Imagine in our time if somebody said, Japs, keep moving. This is a white man's neighborhood. Imagine how offensive that would be. How many people here would be offended by that? Oh, you wouldn't be? Really? Seriously? Okay. You're going to have to stand the ball with me, and I'm watching you guys. Alright? So everybody here would be offended by this. Imagine if ordinary citizens who had no crime, that committed no wrongdoing, were arrested and taken and put behind barbed wires and made to wear uniforms and humiliated and put in prison internment camps in these kinds of cages for years and years without even being charged with a crime. How many of you would be appalled by that as an American? Somebody wouldn't, apparently. I'm just kidding. Okay. Imagine this. Imagine notices like this. If you go into a neighborhood and there's a notice that if you're of a certain heritage or a certain people, you're not allowed to be in this neighborhood. You have to, even if your ancestry, you have to go straight to a prison camp, even though you've done nothing wrong. And imagine if politicians were trying to ban an entire group, a segment of society, even though that segment in a whole had done nothing wrong. Imagine, how could Americans have let this happen based on the freedoms? Oh man, I got the roll music and everything. Even though America was based on such rules that we believe in people being equal, imagine what would you have done if you were there during this time? How did this happen? The media, propaganda, villainization of a people. Do you see this cartoon? What is it telling you? It is telling you that all people of Japanese ethnicity are only awaiting an order from some emperor to attack America, even though this was totally false. Totally false. You know who drew that? Dr. Seuss, by the way. No, I'm not kidding. Look it up. So when you have this kind of a war where you take cartoons and you make pictures that make you think that there is an ethnicity or a religious group, here it being the Jewish population in Germany, that is stabbing you. They are your hidden cells. They are waiting amongst you to attack you because they are your enemy. When you get fed this propaganda and you don't read and you don't think and you don't speak, then you start to think that there are certain people that are not humans. You start to think that they're animals. You start to get fed this idea and you start to buy it. And this is something we have to be very careful about, because what happens, it takes a human being and starts to make a human into being less of a human, dehumanization. You see what they do? If they don't want you to be a human, they give you a number. This is from World War II. And this is from a few years ago. So, if you look at the idea where you start giving numbers to people, that's why prisoners are not given names, they're given numbers. so that people don't think of them as people. You see, you take the human aspects away, you cover up the eyes, you cover up the faces, you cover them up so then they don't look like human beings. So when you're being told that people were electrocuted and shocked and tortured, you don't think of them